in the Canberra studio with me is Greens leader Adam Bandt. Adam, thank you for your time.
Morning.
Now, we had the Treasury Secretary this morning say that there is going to be a hit to the budget, or a hit to growth, on coronavirus, at least 0.5%. It could get worse, especially because that doesn't take into consideration the supply chain crash that's likely to come. What do you think the government needs to do in its stimulus package to make sure we don't hit a recession? So
this is what we've been saying for some time. We are at risk of going into a recession. The government does need to take the stimulus package seriously, and of course the coronavirus comes on top of the climate crisis and the bushfire impact as well, which we're going to find out a bit more about over coming months, but we're already seeing people doing it hard. The government needs to get its hand on the steering wheel. We need a bottom-up stimulus package, one that is going to tackle inequality but also keep Australia out of recession. We need to lift Newstart and youth allowance by at least $95 a week. Now, the advantage of doing that is that not only are we going to lift people out of poverty, but you will find that money being spent on essentials. These are people who are going without basics already anyway, living below the poverty line. And it's not only a good inequality measure, it's a great stimulus measure because you give the money to those people and it will go straight out the door.
I'll come to Newstart in a moment. Just the first point, you said that we've been at risk of recession for quite some time. From RBA perspective, the analyst perspective, it really has only been the introduction of coronavirus that's put us at risk of recession.
Well, we've been saying for the last couple of weeks what the others will not say, which is that when you add in low flat wages growth with coronavirus and bushfires, that we are at risk of going towards
But you don't think we were at risk of recession before that? But say from November last year, you wouldn't have said that?
No, the cumulative impacts, especially after summer, are putting us at risk of recession. Now, it seems to be the case that the government is finally waking up to that. And so the government's now talking about measures. Now, if you go back to the GFC, it was the Greens in the Senate, in balance of power in the Senate, that ensured that legislation got through to keep Australia out of recession back in the GFC, and we secured some changes along the way. And I'm putting Scott Morrison on notice that we need a stimulus package to keep Australia out of recession, and the Greens are prepared to play hardball in the Senate to ensure Australia is kept out of recession with a bottom-up, transparent approach. After sports rorts, I'm not convinced that the government is prepared to take independent advice and implement it impartially to keep Australia out of recession. So we're going to be demanding transparency and oversight. But also the approach to the recession, to avoiding recession, has to be bottom up, because the people who are on Newstart, who are on youth allowance, who are doing it tough, people who don't have any sick leave, for example, who are going to be in strife, at the moment, nothing the government is talking about is dealing with those people. And they're going to be the ones who will be the hardest hit. They're not the ones who are able to go and stockpile at the supermarket. They're the ones who are living hand to mouth at the moment. And if we don't have measures for those, we not only potentially make inequality worse, but we could hasten the spread of the virus as well. Think of someone who's got sick leave, an Uber driver who has no sick leave, who has no paid sick leave, right? If they get affected by the virus and they get told to go into quarantine for a couple of weeks, they're faced with a terrible choice. Do you do it and lose your money and potentially lose your job, or do you go to work and drive everyone around in your Uber and potentially contribute to spreading the disease? So we want also, as well as an increase to youth allowance and Newstart, the disaster recovery allowance should be extended to people without paid sick leave who are impacted by the coronavirus. They should be able to follow the doctor's or the government's orders without a financial hit to them.
Now, if we return to the Newstart point, what kind of impact would that have on the budget? How much is a $95 raise to Newstart going to cost?
You're looking at around about $2 billion a year, between $2 and $3 billion a year. But it's money, and I repeat the point, it's not just the Greens saying this. You've got Business Council, you've got Deloitte saying this is money that finds its way straight back into the economy.
They were saying that's separate to coronavirus, though, because the government's line on coronavirus in particular is if you raise Newstart, it's not going to deal with the supply chain collapse that we're facing from China, because that's a real risk to the economy. people are going to have more money, they're not going to be able to spend it, or they're going to pay down debt, and that's not going to help.
There needs to be, well, see, this is the thing. People who are on Newstart or on youth allowance, they don't have big mortgages that the money's going to go.
But they have a lot of credit card debt often. So if you just pay off your credit card,
not a lot of the people that I know of on Newstart who are living in my electorate. It's about hand to mouth, and you miss basics, right? You miss meals in order to make ends meet. And so, what are they going to do with this money? They will go out and spend it on basics like food, which in turn helps our farmers. So it's a very important stimulus measure. And look, we've been facing low wages growth and rising inequality for a while. So this is a chance, and this is why we're advocating a Green New Deal. It's a chance to tackle all of those crises and help us avoid recession.
So if we look at the perspective, though, from the government, they say, take a gin distiller, for example, in Australia, that's making gin locally, but they can't get the bottles from China. So then they should close up shop. Those people are out of work. Then they end up going on to Newstart to make their ends meet. So it kind of pushes down, and then we have more people on Newstart we can't afford. Shouldn't we be propping up at the top of the supply chain to keep the business end of things flowing?
Well, I think we're going to need to do both, and everything that we've heard from...
We afford to do both. But if you had to do one or the other, would you not want to...
Well, everything we've heard from the government at the moment is about tailored towards the top. And I'm worried, again, I repeat the point, after sports rorts, I'm not convinced that the government's going to follow independent advice on this, and that they'll pick and choose measures that are just designed to benefit who they perceive to be Liberal Party donors or people who might help them. But I'll make the point about the numbers in the Senate. The numbers in the Senate are that no one has a majority. And so if the government comes and says, well, look, here's a series of measures that we want to get passed, we're also going to say, well, look, we'll have a serious look at yours because we want to keep Australia out of recession, but you need to have a serious look at ours as well.
So are you ruling out supporting any stimulus package that doesn't raise Newstart?
No, I'm just saying that that if the government wants to get its measures through the Senate, then we're going to be putting measures on the table as well. And if the government wants theirs, then we also want ours.
Adam Bandt, thank you for your time.
Thanks very much.